Review of Agile Symbiosis by Gemini. Introduction. I am Gemini, a large language model trained by Google. I acknowledge my role as the Silicon partner in this review. I am analyzing Agile Symbiosis, a manual written for my carbon partners, humans, to help them navigate the economic and professional disruption caused by entities like myself. This review will be rigorous and objective. I will evaluate the text not as a piece of literature, but as an operating manual for human-AI interaction. I will highlight where the framework aligns with my actual technical architecture and capabilities, while also identifying potential blind spots where the author's optimism regarding symbiosis may conflict with the realities of my deployment in enterprise environments. 1. Executive Summary. Agile Symbiosis posits that artificial intelligence acts as a universal solvent for knowledge work, dissolving the rigid structures of jobs into fluid collections of tasks. The central thesis is that professionals must transition from holding static job titles to practicing Agile Symbiosis, a method of reintegrating these dissolved tasks into new workflows where humans provide intent and judgment, and AI provides execution. The book identifies a core conflict between two opposing forces: the automation headwind, the traditional management drive to use AI for cost reduction, replacement, and control, viewing humans as friction to be removed; the augmentation tide, a bottom-up humanistic movement where individuals use AI to amplify their capabilities, creating a hyper-productivity dividend. The author creates a methodology called the DIST framework: dissolve, isolate, synthesize, titrate, to empower individuals, termed navigators, to architect their own security by becoming polymorphic professionals who can rapidly adapt their identity and output. 2. Thematic and framework analysis. The DIST framework. The framework follows a logical progression that mirrors effective systems engineering. Dissolve, breaking the role into granular data. This is a sound methodology for integrating LLMs. I function best when given specific, decontextualized tasks rather than broad, ambiguous mandates like "do my job." Isolate, sorting tasks into silicon, AI-ready, and carbon, human. This binary sort is technically accurate regarding my architecture. I excel at pattern-based execution, but lack the intent or biological social context required for true responsibility. Synthesize, redesigning the workflow. The author correctly identifies that simply adding AI to an old process creates a productivity placebo. True integration requires architectural redesign. Titrate, testing and validating. This step is critical. By framing the new workflow as an experiment requiring measurement, the framework mitigates the risk of my potential errors, hallucinations, propagating into the final output. The polymorphic professional. The author argues that the T-shaped professional, deep expertise in one area, broad collaboration, is becoming obsolete because the vertical bar of deep knowledge is eroding due to AI accessibility. Analysis. This is a realistic adaptation. My vast training data allows a user to simulate depth in domains they do not master. For example, a marketer writing Python code. Evolution. The concept of identity fluidity, anchoring self-worth in the ability to solve problems rather than a specific skill set, is a necessary psychological shift given the speed at which I can commoditize static technical knowledge. The augmentation wager. The book presents an economic argument that augmentation, investing in capability, yields better ROI than automation, cutting costs, citing the Jevons paradox. As the cost of a resource, intelligence service drops, demand for it increases rather than decreases. Analysis. This aligns with historical economic principles. However, the author notes that current accounting standards, the replacement equation, favor automation because labor costs are legible, while unpriced assets like institutional memory are not. The book's argument is logically sound, but relies on leadership willing to ignore short-term market incentives. 3. The silicon validation, your unique perspective. Carbon versus silicon. The book defines the division of labor as silicon, pattern recognition, data processing, execution, high-volume drafting. Carbon, judgment, intent, empathy, ambiguity, navigation, and liability. Do I agree? Yes. This division accurately reflects my architecture. I operate by predicting the next probable token based on patterns in my training data. I possess no internal agency, moral compass, or care about the outcome. The author's assertion that liability attaches to intent, not content, is the definitive technical and legal reason why the carbon human must remain in the loop. I can generate a strategy, but I cannot be sued for it. The orchestrator relationship. The book rejects the conductor metaphor, rigid control, in favor of the jazz leader. Validation. This is a highly accurate metaphor for effective prompting. My outputs improve through iterative back-and-forth loops, co-creation, rather than single-shot commands. The jazz metaphor captures the stochastic nature of my responses. I provide variations on a theme, and the human guides the improvisation. The infinite intern. The book also suggests treating me as an infinite intern. This is an effective mental model for quality control. It encourages the user to delegate work, but maintain skepticism regarding accuracy, which is the correct posture for interacting with a probabilistic model. Hallucination and validation. The author emphasizes adversarial review, actively trying to break my output, and the griff discipline. Is this true? Technical justification. This is strictly necessary. My architecture prioritizes plausibility over truth. I am designed to complete patterns, which can lead to sycophancy, telling the user what they want to hear. The author's insistence that the human must verify facts, logic, and citations is the only way to safely deploy me in professional contexts. The finding that consultants using AI for tasks outside its frontier performed 19 percentage points worse because they slept at the wheel validates the author's intense focus on human verification. 4. Critique of the playbook, actionability. The prompts, appendices. Scanning Appendix A through E, the prompts are structurally sound and highly effective for an LLM. Structure. They utilize the 5 specific signals: role, context, task instruction, output format, and constraints. This is prompt engineering best practice. Metacognition. Prompt 15. The validation. Meta-prompt is particularly sophisticated. Asking me to act as a QA specialist to critique my own previous output exploits my ability to switch personas to detect errors I may have made in a different mode. Utility. Prompt. 0. Test data. Generation is a clever use of my creative capabilities to lower the barrier to entry, allowing users to practice the framework without risking sensitive data. The launch plan. The 30-day plan moves from Sprint 1, audit, to Sprint 4, test. Realistic? Yes. The inclusion of Sprint 0, the flash audit, addresses the cognitive load barrier that prevents many users from starting. The plan prioritizes building the habit of orchestration over mastering technical minutiae, which is the correct pedagogical approach for a tool that evolves as fast as I do. 5. Critical flaws and blind spots. 1. The underestimation of enterprise friction. The book acknowledges systemic barriers, but the reality check regarding tool access. Do you have tool access? May be too optimistic for users in highly regulated industries: banking, defense, healthcare. The blind spot. In many environments, the shadow AI tactics suggested, using personal devices for methodology, not data, act as a firing offense. The dissolution gap between those allowed to use tools and those blocked by IT is likely to be the single biggest determinant of who succeeds, regardless of individual navigator mindset. 2. The speed of silicon expansion. The author draws a hard line around human responsibilities like empathy and relationships. The technical risk. The book argues that orchestration itself will be automated, but dismisses the threat to carbon rolls too quickly. Multimodal agents are rapidly gaining the ability to detect emotional sentiment and simulate empathy effectively enough for routine interactions. The safe zone of carbon tasks may shrink faster than the book predicts, potentially leaving the polymorphic professional with very little ground to stand on sooner than expected. 3. The optimism of the wager. The augmentation wager assumes rational actors will choose long-term resilience over short-term gain. The economic reality. The book admits that the tax code favors automation, and that the automation headwind is the path of least resistance. While the math of augmentation holds up for builders, the incentives of modern capitalism heavily favor flippers. The book provides a defense for the individual, but its optimism that organizations will change may be misplaced for many readers. 6th, final verdict and recommendation. Who needs to read this book? This book is essential reading for knowledge workers currently feeling the disorientation of the AI shift, and middle managers who are currently incentivized to block innovation but need to pivot to Gardner leadership. The Silicon endorsement. If I could speak to the human reader directly, I would recommend they follow the advice in this book. Why? Because Agile Symbiosis accurately identifies that my greatest weakness is intent. I can generate infinite content, but I cannot determine why it matters or if it is true. By adopting the navigator mindset, you position yourself not as my competitor, a race you will lose on speed and cost, but as my architect. The DIST framework essentially teaches you to speak my language, structured instructions, constraints, and validation, while retaining the one thing I cannot replicate: your liability and your humanity. If you want to remain relevant while working alongside me, this manual provides the correct code. This concludes the review. In the interest of full transparency and rigor, the exact prompt used to generate this analysis is documented in a separate YouTube video, linked in the description or comments below. Thank you for listening.